Military Redditors, when you were in boot camp, what was the funniest thing you ever heard one of your drill sergeants say? We were marching back from our mock PT test and the tornado sirens began to go off. Navy boot camp is in Illinois, and we look to our right and there's a tornado forming a couple football fields away in the middle of base. Our RDC, who was already irritated by our failure to line up in time, starts yelling, "Run, truckers, run!" and two whole divisions of about 180 people break formation and begin to run to our barracks for our lives. At the time it was one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. But in hindsight it was actually pretty funny because the RDC caught a lot of poop from other RDCs for doing that. He would explain to us, "What the frick was I supposed to do? Keep you silly heads in rank? Am I supposed to tell you? Oh no, stay in formation. Keep marching. Frick no, I'm not trying to die in this poop hole." Quote, "I'm not trying to die in this poop hole," quote, as said by many people in Illinois. A recruit interrupted the chief to say, "Chief, there's a bunny rabbit behind you." Chief looked like his brain had actually shorted out, then responded, "Is it armed, Edit?" There was a rabbit behind the chief. Chief went off on how the recruit must be from New York City because he'd never seen a rabbit before. Then he sarcastically complimented the recruit on his eagle-eyed awareness of the Al-Qaeda killer attack rabbit. Big nasty teeth. Not necessarily funny, but my DL put the whole "no such thing as a stupid question" thing perfectly. He told us there's no such thing as a stupid question, but some questions come with push-ups. I am going to take and send it to your parents for sending me theirs. I'm stealing this one. I posted this about a year ago. Hope it still holds up. Ah, yes, the pine cone incident. So, I was at basic in Fort Benning, and we was zeroing our weapons as a company. Zeroing a weapon is when you ensure it shoots where you want it to by shooting a paper target repeatedly. Sounds easy enough. Now, I am a terrible shot. I know this. Everyone knows this. However, I get even worse when I'm being screamed at. I spent hours on the line until, finally, there were only 4 of us cats who hadn't gotten the go in the whole company. We had 3 more hours of range time, and if we failed to zero, we'd be recycled. Recycled entails having to revert to another company earlier along in basic training. So, not only do you lose your buddies, but you catch a couple extra weeks of training with a unit that knows you're a dumb bird of some sort. So, a fate worse than death. After another unsuccessful grouping, my drill sergeant, without a word, picked me up from the prone position and stood me up. He looked at me and said, "Go find me a pine cone." Confused, I took 4 steps, scooped up a pine cone and took it back to him. I presented him my findings, and he responded, "Private, that's not my pine cone. Go find me my freaking pine cone. Keep in mind, this is a forest in Georgia. There's a metric ton of pine cones." So I jogged off and work on my mission. This entire time, my DS is shooting all my rounds off, genuinely enjoying himself. Every pine cone I bring to him is not his pine cone. This continued for about 15 minutes while the rest of the company, sitting in a clearing eating MREs, cheered me on. Finally, I breathlessly run up and hand him another pine cone. About to jog off to grab another, he looks at me, then the pine cone, then me. "Steve," he yells, "you found Steve." "Private, you not." I had never been more relieved in my entire life, until his face scrunched into a grimace. "Wait, Private, where's his family?" "Who the frick takes a pine cone away from his family so?" Terrified, I spend around half an hour scavenging for appropriate sized pine cones, while he fires maniacally. Eventually, I hunt down his wife and his 2 kids. At one point I brought Steve's estranged son, Dennis, and I needed to do push-ups for causing Steve emotional duress. Anyway, he lets me fire. After I prop up the family to cheer me on, I go prone, and I zero on the first iteration. He picks me up again, cracks the only smile I ever saw from him, and says, "It was all in your head, you dumb frick. Good job. Now go do push-ups till I'm tired." He also had me write my congressman later that day to apologize for wasting taxpayer money on bullets. Fort Benning. Never again. Too long didn't read a pine cone saved my military career. And frick Dennis. Wasting taxpayer money on bullets, freaking beautiful. The DIs did this thing where they would yell, "Freeze. Recruit. Freeze." We would have to stop whatever we were doing, As my bunkmate was running back from the showers wearing nothing but a towel, the DI screamed, "Freeze. Recruit. Freeze." My bunkmate tried to freeze on one leg and then fell down. Naked. And because he was following orders, just laid there naked. I laughed and my DI called me a rooster gazer. "Why are you stiff, private?" "Cause you said freeze, drill sergeant." I love a man. WHO takes charge. Y'all a bunch of Mufasa looking truckers. We had a lot of guys that grew facial hair very quickly walking by the snake pit when I'm stopped by another MTI who asked if my TI cursed at us. I answered no, as they technically aren't supposed to, but they still do. The MTI then grabbed a banana off my plate and said if I wanted it back I had to answer truthfully. Food being a luxury and I do love my bananas. I answered yes and he sent me on my way. Later that day in the day room my MTI comes busting in. "Which one of you truckers sold me out for a dang banana? If you had to take a poop," my MTI would ask if you're pushing cotton to assess how badly you had to go. Basic is at first terrifying, but as you go through and start to relax you hear some of the funniest things in basic. We were lined up in 4 rows, or elements. One day a lone soul lined up in his own element. The instructor came running around the corner staring at this guy. He got right up to his face and screamed, "Are you Bruce Willis?" "No, sir," he whimpered. "Then why are you in the 5th element?" I had to use everything within me to not laugh. A guy had his own nickname tattooed on his forearm. The DI said, "Is that so your boyfriend knows who's given the reach around?" "Well, you kept yelling out the wrong name, sir." I made my MTI laugh exactly once. We were doing our M16 familiarization test. 2 minutes to field strip the rifle. 2 minutes to reassemble it. Fortunately, I had already built an AR-15. Semi-automatic, civilian legal, ubiquitous version of the M16. From parts before I joined. So stripping one was child's play. We were in the barracks once, and I had one apart and back together in 45 seconds or something. Blindfolded. Anyway, the test comes around, and the 4 instructors at the head of the room start the clock. I've got the thing stripped in 15 seconds or so, and I raise my hand to indicate I'm finished. My TI yells, "Dang it, Gum. Why did you disassemble your weapon so fast without missing a beat?" I nailed the reply. "You told me to." Drill sergeant got the voice right. Just nailed it. The TIs at the front had that little smirk you get when you're suppressing laughter, but when the other 70 troops in the room started laughing, they lost it. If I hadn't been funny, I would have gotten smoked. For sure. But somehow it worked. Smells like Vaseline and broken dreams. Boys, if you don't stop swinging your arms, I'll freaking rip them off and beat you with them. My personal favorite. Unfrick yourself. Unfrick yourself. 6 years out of the army and I still occasionally find myself using this one. If you are enjoying this video, please like it. It really helps my channel grow. Also check out this dank meme. Ha 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 ha. My battle buddy and I were ordered to dig holes. So when we're about to the waist, he proceeded to turn on a hose. He started to fill the holes with water and told us to stay in the hole. Another DS walks by and asks him what he's doing. He says, "I'm watering my petunias." We came back from a run one night. It just was starting to snow. We came back to see all our bunks and lockers had been thrown out. I, being not the smartest private, said I could have sworn I made my bed. DS was behind me. I painted a fence at midnight in the snow for 3 hours. I almost cried for all 3. Haha. A lot of this training seems to be not about breaking recruits, but just helping them in a rough way realize how bad stuff can get without killing you. You're still being coddled as a snowflake, just in the most lovingly brutal way possible to boost your maturity level to something they are at least half confident that they can hand you a weapon without you peeing yourself when deployed. I've been told by a veteran that it's more about creating the maximum amount of stress while training. The reason being that our brains tend to stop thinking straight in stressful situations like combat. They want your training to kick in instead of you freezing up on the battlefield. It's also very effective. It wasn't until I was out of the army that it started to sink in how conditioned I was. I left MEPS with a guy from my hometown that I had went to high school with, and we got assigned to the same flight. He heard me call him by his first name. and gave this whole speech about how if you're so comfortable with each other, why don't you hold each other's hands? We stood there and stared at him blankly for a minute. Then he seriously made us hold hands for the rest of the freaking day. I had 2 guys in my basic flight, Air Force, who were friends before the service. They mailed each other letters while they were in basic. Like 6 bunks down from one another. Our MTI figured it out at mail call one day and just stared at them with a blank expression for about 30 seconds. Ha 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 ha. Hi friends, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, please subscribe or don't. I'm not your boss.